scholar, writer, and good friend, Dr. Garland. She's a scholar, professor, and award-winning writer. And her work, recent work, specializes in looking at stuff related to media literacy and fake news. Two topics I think are urgent in today's world and are important for us as teachers to introduce in our class. So I'm going to leave the word to Dr. Garland so she can tell us her experiences. Remember that you have some documents that I sent you on the email that we're going to be using as part of the activity. So, Dr. Garland, we're all yours.
Thank you. And thank you for inviting me to do this. I appreciate it. And I'm happy to be able to talk to you all today. Before I kind of discuss critical media literacy and media literacy, I wanted to tell you just a little bit about myself. I won't, inundate you with stuff, but just the basics. So when I started out, I received my BA in English education, which allowed me to teach high school English. And I got that from Western Michigan University, which is in Kalamazoo, Michigan, of course, here in the States. From there, I got an MAT. It's called an MAT. They don't offer them too much, but basically it's a master's in teaching English. And then from there, I got a Ph.D. in curriculum and instruction with an emphasis in English education. And then from there, studied media literacy education. And so I just like to tell, especially for you all, so that you can see kind of like what your options are as you proceed through your academic career, especially because sometimes you think that you can only teach, and of course that's not true. So let me make sure that I can share my screen here. Oh, and the other thing is that I'm pretty interactive when I do these presentations. So I do want to make sure that you all, like if I ask a question, I really want an answer. One more thing, my laptop is super slow, so be kind. Exhibit A, it's coming. Or maybe not.
It happens.
Yeah, I need to get a new one actually, and I just keep putting it off. You know how technology, oh gosh, and now, do you see that? There's an error, so it's gonna, okay, hold on. Cue the elevator music.
Yeah, technology is always a thing. You can have everything go prepared. It's happening.
Right. The thing is, I've had this laptop for like, this is 2019. I got it in 2012. So it really has served me well.
But it's, I think, yeah, you had it since 2010.
2012.
You have like 4 laps, we already have like.
Right. So,
I mean, I have 4 laptops since 2010. I had the one I finished my dissertation with, and the second one I bought when I started teaching here, and then I got another one, and then the gaming laptop I have today.
I refuse to get a new one. I know that sounds horrible, but maybe this will, you know.
This will be a wake-up call.
Yeah. Okay, here we go, luckily.
Wow.
I know. You know what I did? There we go.
And
fingers crossed. Yay!
Never life.
Okay, so what I want to talk today about is using critical media literacy to read media. And we're going to talk about two different types of media. Hopefully, I'm going to try to pace myself a little bit, but not speed through because I have a lot of information. But I want to make sure we talk about online news media and also popular media. And so what comes to mind when you hear the words fake news? I'll turn my volume up. Anybody?
News, false information, or there is a term, I don't know how to say it in English, but it's called like post-truth, post-verdad.
Yeah, basically like post-truth or
Post-truth, yeah.
or what's
Okay.
calls truthiness.
Okay. Yeah, and all of those are absolutely right. So false news, and also we talk about post-truth now.
Yeah.
And so here in the States, it seems that, you know, our president has kind of coined the phrase fake news, but, you know, in reality, fake news has been a thing way before he has become president. He's just kind of made us a little bit more aware of what it is. And sometimes what he means when he says it and what fake news actually is are two different things. And I also don't want to, you know, make this central to the States because now other world leaders have actually kind of picked up becoming perpetuators of fake news as well, such as Brazil's president. However, what I wanted to do before we get into everything with media literacy or critical media literacy is to make sure that you understand what fake news is. And that also requires me telling you what it isn't. So I'm going to use these two scholars, Alcott and Gensko, their definition of fake news. So the first thing is what fake news is not. So fake news does not include unintentional reporting mistakes. So for example, you might read something online, or if you're watching the news, they make a mistake. A lot of times they'll redact their statement and, you know, it's just an error. It's not a big deal. Not fake news. Rumors that do not originate from a news article. That's not fake news either. So for example, I heard that the Queen of England doesn't like Meghan Markle. And so, of course, that is not fake news. It's just a rumor, hopefully, and not something that we should necessarily count as fake.
So we should confuse fake news with gossip.
Right, so not gossip. Right. Conspiracy theories. Conspiracy theories also are not considered fake news. So if you believe that aliens built the pyramids, if you believe that, like here they have a thing about crop circles having been created by aliens, that's just a conspiracy theory. And even now, like I said about leaders before, Brazil's president recently said that non-governmental organizations created the fires in the Amazon. Again, that's a conspiracy theory. It's not necessarily true or proven or come from facts. So that's also just not fake news. It's just a conspiracy theory. The other thing that fake news is not is satire. So I watch a show called The Daily Show, right? And that is just satire. I'm trying to think of the other. So Trevor Noah has one, and oh my gosh, John Oliver.
Yeah.
Right? And so also, I wanted to make sure that you guys saw this. Are you all familiar with this particular?
Actually, yes.
Right. And so, of course, this too is not necessarily fake news. We should understand that to just be satire. And the last thing is false statements by politicians. False statements by politicians, although we might want to categorize them as fake news, they're just politicians being politicians, trying to get votes.
Okay.
Okay, so fake news does include, and I don't know, did you,
There was a question.
I'm sorry?
There was a question here.
Oh, question.
I wanted to ask if some really important politician says some false information.
Hmm.
Is that not considered fake news?
It's not fake news. It can be them trying to maintain their position. It can be them trying to evoke emotion in their base or into other people, but it's not fake news. Yeah, and that's a good question. Oh, and I forgot this last part. So even though Alcott and Ginsco say reports that are slanted or misleading, which is kind of what you just asked about, kind of, sort of, um, does not include fake news. I crossed it out because if it's a report that's supposed to be credible from an actual news source, then I think that that is fake news. But a politician just saying false statements, even if they are hugely known, it's still not. So fake news includes news articles that are intentionally and verifiably false and could mislead readers. And so remember, I think mainly because what we're focusing on is news or online news or news media, then what people just say is not necessarily fake news. You can call them a liar. You can say they want votes, but not fake news. Okay, so Raul, were you able to print out, do they have the PowerPoint in front of them or no?
Yeah, they can see it.
No, I mean, but not a printed, like a hard copy.
No, but they.
Okay.
But they have, yeah, they have the hand, but they do have the handouts that you sent.
Okay, cool. I just wanted to make sure so I know what I should tell them. So media literacy. I want to talk about what media literacy is first before we talk about critical media literacy so that you can see the difference. So media literacy is the ability to access, analyze, evaluate, and create media in a variety of forms. And we've been using this definition for a couple of decades now to help students to become what's called media literate. So today we are going to access, analyze, and evaluate. Of course, we don't have time to create any media, but as you move forward and maybe use this with your students, remember it's always important to have them to create their own media because that is a great way for them to see what goes into production and how you make choices about what you want people to understand. So I wanted to use the 2 articles that I gave to you, so you should have those, to analyze and evaluate media so that we can figure out what is fake news and how to determine what fake news is. So the first article, migrants demand $50,000 each, or actually let's look at both of these. Can you tell just from looking at them which one you think is actually a fake news article? Any guesses?
And the immigrant one.
The immigrant one, the one that says migrants demand $50,000?
Yeah.
Okay. Anybody else have a guess?
Any thoughts?
I think the same, yeah. It's like the left one.
Yeah, the left one.
For me, yeah.
This one?
Yeah, I think that.
Okay, so we only say the migrant one. So let's do this. You should also have this, right? This PDF?
Yeah.
Okay, so what we're gonna do is take a look at the PDF and we're also gonna take a look at the articles simultaneously so that we can decide which one seems to be more fake than the other or which one is actually fake news. So on that PDF, which is from ISTE, I wanna go down to where it says, and I don't need to pull it up, right? Because you guys have it. Yes, no? Okay, so we all have the same documents in front of us. Okay, so if we take a look, you can use this in order to quickly determine if something is fake news or not. So I want to go down to the second bulleted thing here. A real news story, it says the headline matches the rest of the article. A fake one, a headline is outrageous or doesn't match the article. So take a quick look at both articles. Do the actual titles of the articles match what the actual information is? And you can kind of just skim it because we don't have time to necessarily read the whole thing.
Yeah, the first one, the title fits the information. But the second one, I thought it was like to surreal, something about aliens, so I thought it was just very clear that maybe it was just false.
Okay, so the first one, and I could barely hear. The first one you think does match
Yes.
what the information is, and the second one you say no.
Yes.
Okay. Does anybody else have an opinion about that?
I'm still gonna go with the first one.
Okay.
Yeah, but but it's because I actually looked at the URL at the bottom of the I looked at the URL at the bottom.
Okay. So you still say the first one is the fake news article.
I thought that the first one looks like a real news report.
Uh-huh.
Just false. So if that is something to put my attention on, it's the first one. So
Okay.
maybe that's the fake news. I don't know. But
Okay.
I look at the articles and the information fits.
Okay.
The comment.
Okay. And so that's one way to tell. If the headline actually matches the rest of the article, then it may be an actual news article or have actual news. Another way to look at that, and I want to just point to this part, has a byline naming the person who wrote the article. A fake news story doesn't list an doesn't list an author, so you can't investigate the person. So take a look at both articles again and tell me, can you tell who wrote both of them? Oh, that was noisy. I'm sorry, what?
There is a byline in the first article, and the second one there is not.
Right. So for the first one, this migrants one that demand the $50,000, Steve Straub actually wrote this article. But for this other one, the one on the right, United Nations, there is no author for that one. So if we go up here, the URL, which I think Raul just talked about, matches the news source, or the URL is strange or doesn't match the news outlet. If the URL actually matches what was said for the title of the article, then that's one way to tell. Has a current date. So I know that these dates are not current because they happened last year, but at the time that I pulled them, these were current dates. But a lot of times you can tell that something is fake news because it might have a date that was from months ago or years ago. Comes from a respected news outlet. Can you all name some respected news outlets?
New
Okay. Anything else?
WAPO, Washington Post, Reuters,
Okay.
BBC.
Okay, good. And so if it comes from something that's not credible, like these could be considered not credible, then perhaps that it's still fake news. So I would, if I was to click on this one here, when I pulled this article, it actually came up, of course, that's why you have it in front of you. When I click on it now, it actually, let me see, it says cannot locate the internet server or proxy server. So it's actually disappeared. Another way that you can tell if something is fake news or real news is to actually check what's called a fact or bias checking site. And so for these purposes, I have chosen PolitiFact. And what you can do is go to these sites and actually just search the article or search the information. To find out which one is true and which one is fake. And so the one on the left, did the migrant caravan demand $50,000 for each member? Actually, you can tell here, and I'm not going to click on it, but it is mostly true. So the information is true here. It's not considered fake news. It does come from someone's opinion site, but it's not fake. It's not false at all. The one on the right website falsely claims the United Nations caught helping and coaching migrants is completely false. And for some of the reasons that we talked about here. So for these purposes, like I said, I went to PolitiFact, but what I suggest as a more global resource is either Fact Check or Snopes. And you can do the exact same thing. The other day I went to Fact Check, I went to Snopes, I put in Amazon Fires to find out what was true and what was false, and everything came up. So it's a more global site. Question?
Yes, but I'm wondering how does the website work? I mean, suppose that when you like put the icon there, I suppose that the website like tells you whether it's true or not.
Yeah, I'll click on it so you can see.
But the only thing that you have to do is like post the URL there, and the website is gonna tell you whether it's true or not, or how does it work?
Right, so you can either put the actual headline of the story in there, or you can put keywords in there. So about a year ago, this was a big deal here in the States, this migrant caravan that was bringing Hondurans over the Mexican border. And so it was pretty current. So all I did, what I personally did, was I put migrant caravan into the search, and then everything about the migrant caravan came up, including these stories. Yeah, and then when you click on it, it tells you exactly why it's true or false.
The argument, like saying why is it false or is it true, or it just shows you like false or true and that's it, or just the information?
No, it shows this too. So when I clicked on it, it shows this part too. It shows, like, it gives you an entire, almost essay, like, explaining, yeah, and giving you actual, so here it cites the San Diego Tribune. So they actually give factual information to tell you why it's true, or it gives you factual information to tell you why it's not true.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. But thanks for asking that. Okay, so make sure too that you note Fact Check and Snopes, I think, are more appropriate for your purposes. Okay, so we talked about media literacy, and media literacy is when you access, analyze, evaluate, and create media. Critical media literacy is different because of the word critical. And so I won't get into that whole thing, but critical media literacy requires that students do the following. that they pay attention to how media is constructed to perpetuate cultural views. So it's not just about analyzing and evaluating to find out if it's true or not, or to find out if you've been duped. But now we're talking about culture. How does media perpetuate culture and teach about culture? Also, it requires that students view media constructions as a part of pre-established cultural views, meaning before I was born, before you were born, society already had a perspective about specific cultural things. For example, society already had established things about who women were and what they could do, or who men are and what they could do, or who African Americans are and what they could do, or the difference between South Americans and North Americans. Those were already set before either of us were born. So we were kind of born into this cultural view. Also, it requires that students recognize that their own and others' roles as audience members who consume media, or recognize their own and others' roles. Meaning, the media is not just doing something to you, but you're engaging with media. So you're reading online news stories, you're viewing movies. You are not just a passive consumer, and neither is anybody else. And finally, it requires that students understand that media is an entertainment business with the explicit purpose to generate profit. So no matter if you believe that it's there to inform or to persuade, it is there to make money, no matter what you think. And so we're gonna go over each one of these with the articles and then with popular media. Let me check my time, I have time. Okay. The way that you can teach critical media literacy is with critical media literacy pedagogy. And so pedagogy is a familiar word to you guys, or no? Perfect. Just making sure you're with me. Okay, so critical media literacy pedagogy, I usually use Kellner and Share, so the one on the left. I use their 5 core concepts of critical media literacy, which I'm not going to read them to you because, again, we're going to go over each one in detail. And then these questions help you to become more critical media literate. And they come from the Center for Media Literacy. And so you can, when we're done, just Google Center for Media Literacy, and they have a ton of information there for you. Okay, so let's go back to these articles. The first one is the principle of non-transparency, the first step in critical media literacy. The question that you want to ask is, who created this message? And so I'm starting here too, because we kind of already established this, right? The United Nations doesn't have a person there. There's no name. And even if you go to the very end of the article, it says source text. And when it was live, I clicked on it and it just took me to a Twitter account. So again, I'm sorry. Was there a question? Okay. So yeah, it just takes you to a Twitter account. So further proving that it's not very credible, but also not letting you see who created it. Before I go on to that though, if you go to the one that is more credible, even though there's a byline there, his name is Steve Schwab. If you go at the very end of that article, it says Steve has been involved in national politics for over 20 years and helps run one of the largest conservative opinion and analysis sites in the country. So knowing that information, what can we expect from Steve? Anybody? If we, oh, go. I didn't hear.
Can you repeat the question, Kathy?
Oh, yeah. Knowing that Steve runs one of the largest conservative opinion and analysis sites in the country, what can we always expect from Steve?
True information.
Information, but specifically from what?
Left wing, right wing.
Right.
Yeah, conservative?
I know, sorry. I think the conservative part. Yeah. Right.
Right. So we can always expect Steve to provide a right-wing opinion no matter what he's talking about. So the thing is, even though it's a credible source, it's still biased because he's always going to talk about conservative politics or come from a conservative point of view. Okay, the next one is codes and conventions. Media messages are constructed using a creative language with its own rules. And so this is no matter what we're looking at. Go back to here. So from that United Nations Caught Helping and Coaching Caravan of Illegal Aliens, even though I don't have time to teach you journalistic media, what types of things do you think are included in this article to help catch your attention so that you don't scroll past it? And you might want to look at the article, like look.
Well, on the first, it's very clear the title, aliens.
The title?
Yes.
Okay, what about this title is made to make you, to catch your attention?
Aliens.
Did you say everything?
Aliens.
Oh, okay. Anything else? Other than the title?
The map itself.
Yeah, so, right, go ahead.
Good there.
Yeah, look at the red dots and how they're.
Yeah, I would say that the road as well.
Yeah.
Right, so actually using a map, and especially with all of these pings here, the whole story is about how, again, Hondurans were coming up through the border. And so this is meant to emphasize that. That's meant to catch your attention, in addition to the actual title of the article. What about the other one? Migrants demand $50,000 each to go home or else. I'm sorry, there's like a bus going by when you were talking.
There's a plane passing by, so.
Oh.
Very close to the regional airport, so.
Ah, so it's an airplane that I keep hearing taking off and landing. Okay.
Now you can say it.
Okay.
Demand in capital letters.
Right, demand is in capital letters, and anything else. That was a good one.
You said before that he was right wing, so do you support the war? It's like, I don't know, something.
Oh, this part up here.
Will follow believe.
Absolutely. So this being up here on top of the article online, also it being in red, because red usually symbolizes that we're in danger or there's a warning. So yes, all of these things are creative languages that are used in order to get our attention. The other thing that I want to point out too is that usually stories that are not credible are not punctuated correctly. So for example, this exclamation point on this article shouldn't be here. News articles normally don't use that. The capital letters, as the other student pointed out, also the word or shouldn't be capitalized. So another example of this is this particular image. So while we were trying to figure out who was coming across the border or not, this picture resurfaced. And I say resurfaced because what happens with journalism is they can get photos from all different places, kind of like a stock photo. So this actually did happen. This is an actual Mexican border policeman, and he was actually beat up. And so this picture did happen, but it happened years ago, and it happened before President Trump was in office, and it happened before there was even the whole caravan situation. But it resurfaced and then was posted to Twitter, and then of course, because of the way social media was retweeted and retweeted and made to seem like someone was actually being violent with the Mexican police force when it wasn't true at all. So this also is a way, even though it's not a news story, but it's a way now with social media that we can perpetuate our own fake news or our own false stories. Okay, the last thing I think I wanted to say about this article is content and messages. Media have embedded values and points of view. Media have embedded values and points of view. So no matter, even if it's not something like from someone who we assume is going to have a conservative view or assume is going to have some specific view, media always has embedded values and points of view. And so you can tell this, and I'm just going to go through it with you guys, from Steve's article here, because of the types of words that he uses. And so he says here, if you needed any more proof that the migrant caravans at our southern border are not, in all capital letters, what they appear to be, now these invaders are making a new demand. And so what does the word invaders make you think?
It's kind of rude. I mean, it's kind of aggressive for the context, right?
Right, yeah. Invaders is not a nice word to use for somebody who's fleeing their country. Now these migrants, and so even though migrants is an okay word, the fact that he has it in quotes, what do you mean when you put something in quotes like that, migrants? So for example, if I said, today I'm talking to some students and I put it in quotes, what am I implying there?
You're trying to refer to them in a, what was the name? What was the word, Raul? Pedagogy.
Jordan,
No,
the Robert?
do you remember when you give an example of the, and there
There
was
was a Robert.
well, that word, you're trying to refer like in a bad way to I mean,
Right,
to like put in doubt that they are actually students.
Yeah.
right, right.
They are actual migrants.
Right. Yeah. And so, like, are they really migrants? Are they not really migrants? That's what those quotes mean. And so, even on the right side, now the solution is clear. Protect our border with deadly force. Force these folks back home without a penny. And again, he calls the migrants invaders. And so, what is, just from reading these few lines, what point of view does this person have about migrants coming to America?
Well, that person wants to kill them. I mean, that's clear because
Right.
that is going to use deadly force.
Right.
He's not going to like be like touching them.
Yeah. Yeah. That's basically what this message is saying. And so one last thing to show you how this is contrasted, I wanted to show you this clip from Vice. Are you all familiar with Vice? It comes on HBO. Yes, no?
Not me.
No.
No?
Yes.
Okay. Yes and no. I'm in the wrong thing. But just to show you, this is not what I want to show you. Just to show you how you can embed a message, even if you agree with the message, still how a message can be conveyed. And so my question is going to be, what message is being sent here and how is it being sent differently? It's about the same topic, migrants coming to America.
So we're with the caravan of migrants. They're people for as far as the eye can see. Despite what the Trump administration is trying to do to clamp down, to deter people from coming from Central America, people are still coming in the thousands. And it seems like they're finding solidarity and strength in their numbers. If you're able to get to the United States, how do you plan on preventing yourself from being deported?
Pues que me den asilo allá por el bien de mis hijos, por la seguridad de mis hijos. Nuestra vida corre peligro y no podemos volver. Seguiremos todos. Nosotros no somos gentes, como dicen, sinvergüenza, somos gente luchonas.
Asylum allows people to ask for protection from certain types of severe harm that they're experiencing in their country. The person has to demonstrate they have what's called a well-founded fear of persecution on account of race, nationality, religion, political opinion, or this catch-all phrase of membership in a particular social group. And they have to show that this fear of severe harm for these reasons is either being done by the government or the government is unable or unwilling to provide them with protection. The vast majority of the cases that we do see from Central America who are seeking asylum are fleeing gang-related violence or domestic violence.
So this is the San Pedro Sula airport. It's where migrants who are being deported from the United States back to Honduras land. And San Pedro Sula is one of the most dangerous cities on the planet. It's a very high murder rate, and the gangs MS-13 and the 18th Street Gang both have heavy presences here. So while some migrants in the United States who are claiming asylum are kind of stuck in limbo awaiting their immigration court proceedings, those who are denied asylum oftentimes have to come back to cities like this where they are forced to face the very perils that they were fleeing from in the first place.
Lo vigilan bien, todos los movimientos que uno hace, ellos lo saben. Y no hay escapatoria para ellos. Y le están sacando hasta que lo dejan sin nada. Y si se niega a pagarle, lo liquidan. Mi hijo fue a visitar a un familiar, ahí le pidieron dinero y él no andaba. Y ellos sabían bien que era mi hijo. Y él no pudo contactarme por teléfono porque él no andaba a teléfono. Entonces lo que hicieron fue matarlo. Lo asesinaron, le pusieron un torniquete, lo estrangularon y le sacaron la lengua.
Okay, thank you. And so what I hope that you can see, and I'm going to try to kind of speed this up, is that is the same topic. We're still talking about the same exact migrants coming to the same exact United States over the same exact border, but it has a whole different message. And so for this part with critical media literacy, the question or the purpose is to understand that different people experience the same media message differently. So what did you all take from watching that video? How did you interpret what was going on? Was it the same as what the two articles were?
No, I mean, it was from the perspective of the migrants that want to enter the United States, definitely not treating them like invaders,
Right.
like people looking for help.
Right. Right. Yeah. So thank you for that. This whole episode was supposed to show that there are actually people who actually need help, who are actually fearing people like Steve, who, as we established earlier, seemed like he would like to kill them or hurt them. But what this also asks you is, how might different people understand this message differently from me? And so even though maybe you and I and all of us might see the compassion here, the idea is that to think about how other people might see it. Maybe they don't see it that way. And I think we established that before. So the final thing with critical media literacy is to understand that the motivation of media are organized to gain profit and or power. And I'll start with what is true for here in the States. Oops. 15 billionaires own America's news media companies. And so what that means, and you want to think about it, only 15 people own all of the media in this country, which means that things like this can happen. Rupert Murdoch owns 120 newspapers. This family owns 59 radio stations. Jeff Bezos now owns the Washington Post. But also, I did want to show you how you can locate this information for your own country. So you can go to Media Ownership Monitor, and it shows exactly who owns the media. Let me see if it will come up here. And so when you go to that website, and I really suggest that you do, what you can do is scroll down from the page that I first went to. It'll tell you exactly who owns each type of media here. You can also go up here to the menu, find out more about the owners, individual owners or whole companies. You can also learn more about the context. Even this first sentence, Colombia's political, legal, social, and historical context explains a lot about its media. And so here you can find out what those connections are, historically, politically, economically, by society. So I really do suggest that, you know, in your own time that you take a look at that. And again, that's something that you can use with your future students to help them understand what media ownership means. When you have such a small few people owning media, then what do you think that does for the actual media that you engage with? Like, let's say only Raul and I owned a TV station. All the TV stations.
Well, the program would be epic, but that's a different story. I mean, we can call it the Twin News Network, but
we can. Maybe we'll just be more awesome. The twin towers activated. But seriously, if only a few people own the media that you engage with, then that really limits the messages that you receive. Or it limits it to only what those two people want, those few people want. And that's really not what you want for society. Okay, so I'm gonna go on. I think I have, what, 15 minutes?
no, we're doing well.
Oh, okay. How long do I have so I know if I need to speed talk?
You can keep going. We have at least another 20, 25 minutes.
Okay. All right. So cool. So aside from news media, usually when you talk about critical media literacy, you also talk about popular media. And so what is popular media? Popular media is the reason, I'm just going to give, this is the KG definition. Popular media is the reason why I can show these two images, and I think most people in the room know who these people are. Okay. So that is my definition of popular media. And so what we're going to do is go through critical media literacy, those same 5 core concepts and questions, but just with using popular culture, things that you should recognize, or maybe not. Has anybody read this book? It's called Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief.
I haven't read it, but I saw the movie.
You saw the movie. Great. So that's still good. So this is the actual book, and this is the book cover. So remember, just like with online media, the first thing is that all media messages are constructed, and we ask the same question: who constructed this media, or who created this message? And so it's not a trick question, just blurt out answers. Who do you think created this message? This is the book cover. Okay, so maybe the author created this book cover. Another plane. I don't know how you guys do this every time.
Aeroplane.
You get used to it?
Oh yeah, we got used to it.
Okay. So also any other answers as to who might have created this book cover? Okay, so let's move on. Here is the actual film trailer thingy. I forgot the actual name of this, but who created this message?
I can't tell.
Well, like think generally, who usually would create something for a film?
Graphic designer.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure. Perhaps a graphic designer. The idea here, though, is to think about, I'm trying to move my thing out of the way. Okay. The thing about it is to think about both of them. Do we see any differences between these two? Or rather, what are the differences? Because I know you see the differences.
There is a lot more details on the right side.
Okay.
Yes, more trying to. It's like a human body, not like a drop.
Okay.
And
Does somebody in the back say something?
looks older.
Older. He looks older over here. Yep. Anything else about the direction that both of them seem to be going?
We have similar elements like the building, the background, and the lighting.
So I heard similar elements like the background and the lightning.
The building and the lighting, but the one on the left is like more, I would say, epic. Because it's a cinematographic production, so you need to capture more the attention of the public.
Okay.
There's difference in the age of the main character.
Right.
And yeah, the title is different. Looks more powerful on the right one.
Yes, looks more powerful on the right one.
So the right looks more powerful. And I don't know if either of you mentioned how this person is facing us, but that makes a difference too, as opposed to this person who seems to be going towards the city. Okay, so good. So this shows you how all media messages are constructed. And remember, they're constructed not just for any purpose, but for a cultural purpose in order to show how media perpetuate cultural views. So what you should be thinking is why, for this left one, is this little boy looking like a little boy, which he actually is in the book, as opposed to when they create a movie, he looks more like a, I don't know, 17, 18-year-old kid who's saving the world, some type of, or at least New York, maybe. Okay, so remember we talked about codes and conventions. Media messages are constructed using a creative language with its own rules. And I wanted to show you this. So before we talked about just the words and how that article had an image there, right? But with film media and also any type of visual media, the most basic thing that you can teach students is about color. It's called color symbolism. So here, what creative techniques are used to attract my attention? We have the colors here and what they symbolize, and also which products are associated with those symbols. So now we're going to take a look back at this image again. What creative techniques are used to attract my attention? So what colors are here and why do you think they are here for this book cover?
There's a little green.
A lot of green.
Yellow.
Some yellow. And so maybe we'll go with orange here because they don't have a yellow up here.
Dark blue.
Some dark blue.
black.
Okay.
Black.
And so green here, according to this chart, means balance, growth. So maybe growth we can go with this particular cover since he's so small. Restore, sanctuary, generous, and maybe something here, instinct. Since they don't have yellow, we can go with orange. From this other film trailer, we notice which colors primarily.
Blue.
Right. And so if we go here, spirit, perspective, control even, which kind of goes with what we looked at before. So again, I really strongly suggest using or teaching about color symbolism to show how media construct messages. The other thing that you can use is to understand codes and conventions of visual media is something called film language. And so I suggest the book by John Golden, even though it was from 2001, they don't have a new print out. It really is specific for people who plan to teach about English or language or literacy, because he goes through and he gives specific examples as to how film actually portray things based on shots and angles. And so the most common shots are here, and I'm going to go through each one, so I won't read them to you. Okay, so the first type of shot that is pretty common is called a medium shot. And again, this is something that filmmakers use. And it's what most film and what most advertisements are shot in. They are shot in medium shots because you can kind of see everything behind the main character. The next two that you should notice, close-up shots, which you might be familiar with, which of course are to show emotion, and extreme close-up shots. So even though, as I'm sitting here thinking, I probably should have chosen another one for extreme close-up shot, but usually an extreme close-up shot is meant to show emotion, but we can't necessarily see Spider-Man's emotion here. Also long shot. So a long shot is meant to show perspective, and it's meant to show a scene so that you know exactly where you are in a film. My husband had to correct me. I thought this was Stark Enterprises. I have to, full disclosure, I'm not a superhero fan. Sorry, Raul. But he did tell me that this is the Avengers. Apparently in the comic book, they live in a mansion, but I guess they changed it for the film, so it's more like a complex. So this shows the Avengers complex so that you know exactly where you are in a scene. Think about it like if you're reading a book and the author is setting the scene for you, but a filmmaker can do it just in a long shot. I think these are my last two. So the first one is a two-shot. And for a two-shot, it literally shows two people in the same frame. But the reason is there's only two people is also to show you that they're equal and to show you like parallel, like no one's competing with each other. And again, I had to ask, and I found out that yes, in this scene, that they had to trust each other. And so it was establishing trust for both characters. This last one, point of view shot, is exactly what it sounds like. So you can see from the point of view of the character. And so in this scene, we are looking at Spider-Man, who is looking at his parents, and we can see exactly how he would see them. It's also called an over-the-shoulder shot. Okay, so this is from a movie called The Blind Side. Has anybody seen that movie?
Yeah.
So I heard yes, and I see no vigorously. All right, so without knowing anything about this movie, and also using what I just told you quickly, the first question I have for you is, what two shots are these? What are these two shots? Or which one is on the left? What kind of shot is this on the left? I heard medium.
Sure.
Anybody disagree with medium?
Yeah, medium.
Medium shot right here, and then
Yes, medium shot and
the point of view.
no, point of view.
Oh, the one on the right.
Okay, so let's start. The one on the left, it is medium. But this one on the right, I heard somebody say point of view.
Well,
Go ahead.
Point of view, who?
well, I would say from the perspective of the African American character.
Oh, maybe.
So remember, a point of view shot is going to be from the point of view of the character. So we're like, this person is the person really telling the story here, right? Super. So which one is it? I didn't, let's wait. Okay. What is it? Oh.
More like a two-shot, I think.
So remember, two shot only has two people.
Okay, so
We're gonna guess all the way back.
so it's like close-ups now.
So it is a close-up shot. And the purpose of a close-up shot, again, is to show the emotion in a scene. Medium shot is meant to show most of the scene so that we can see what's going on. So again, without you having seen this movie, maybe, this is the main character, this black guy here who is a famous football player. His name is Michael Orr. This is his mother. Do we notice anything in this shot with his mother other than her sadness?
A lot of yellow.
A lot of what?
Yellow.
Oh, sure. Yep. A lot of yellow. Anything else?
Black. Black.
Anything that's not a color.
Yeah, wine. She's drinking.
Yeah, she has. And so it's not just this wine. She also, I don't know if you can see it, but there's a bunch of bottles here. So Michael Orr's mother actually was an addict and actually ended up giving him up for adoption. And this family over here actually adopted him and made him feel safe and secure. And eventually he became a wonderful football player. That's the story in a nutshell. So this close-up shot shows that closeness. It's a little different than here with his mother, who's looking sad with all this yellow around and her beer bottles and wine bottles, as opposed to him with this family here reading a book and being intimate.
There's a Coke for he,
and she,
and her,
and me,
and them. There's a different Coke for all of us.
especially one for him.
no feet have wandered where you've walked.
no eyes saw what you've seen.
No one's lived the life you live.
no head has held your dreams.
To act the same would be mundane.
What a boring thing to do. That's why there is just one me.
And a billion unique yous.
We all have different looks and loves.
Likes and dislikes too.
But there's a Coke for we.
And us.
And there's a Coke for you.
Okay, so I wanted to show this Coca-Cola commercial, and we're gonna watch it 2 more times to get 3 different messages. But to show how advertisements, of course, also can be analyzed critically. So we wanna look at audience decoding. Different people experience the same media message differently. Even though this is a commercial, what do you think you were supposed to get out of this Coca-Cola commercial?
Urgent need to buy a Coca-Cola.
That's one thing, yes. Anything else culturally? I couldn't hear. What was the answer?
The term for inclusion?
Oh, inclusion, yep. So everybody. Coca-Cola is great for everyone, maybe. Anything else? No? Okay, so how might different people understand this message differently than me? We notice that it's inclusive, but how might somebody else interpret this message? Any ideas? So, oh, was somebody about to say?
I was thinking that it's hard to tell. I don't know, put myself in another perspective. I don't know.
It's hard to put yourself in another perspective.
I would say that maybe if someone wants to see like a negative connotation about the advertisement, maybe people will say that they want to spread Coca-Cola all over the world, no matter like who you are or what kind of people you are.
Okay.
Spread Coca-Cola all over the world. So it doesn't matter if you're Asian, if you're gay, if you're black, if you're from whatever country you are, Coca-Cola is gonna conquer you.
Okay, yeah. but yes, I think this is true. And so that is a good message, I think, to take from this that somebody else might think about. And I also want to acknowledge what the other student said, which is that it's hard to think about something from another person's perspective. And so critical media literacy really asks you to do that. I want you to watch this advertisement one more time. Raul, can you play it one more time?
Yeah.
And I want you to think about who's not included in this commercial.
There's a Coke for he.
And she.
And her.
And me.
And them. There's a different Coke for all of us.
Especially one for him.
No feet have wandered where you've walked.
No eyes saw what you've seen.
No one's lived the life you live.
No head has held your dreams.
To act the same would be mundane.
What a boring thing to do. That's why there is just one me.
And a billion unique yous.
We all have different looks and loves.
Likes and dislikes too.
But there's a Coke for we.
And us.
And there's a Coke for you.
Okay, did we notice anyone who was not in this commercial?
Yeah, it's not the same, but at the end, there is someone old.
It was like a country guy.
Yeah.
He's pointing out this guy.
Maybe it's somebody from Asia.
I didn't see any Asian people there.
Yeah.
Okay, so no Asian people. Anything else? Oh, she's saying, you think?
Oh yeah, well actually that's true.
Maybe older people, but we saw
one guy that was like how can I say it? With like the dawn, like pointing out the sky with a girl. Yeah.
So did we mention older people? Is that what we said? Or no?
We thought that, but actually there was.
There is an older person?
Well, yeah, there was an older person there.
Okay, so one older person, but also this is how someone might understand this message differently than me. So if I was an older person, older than I am, then I might look at this commercial and think, oh, this is not my world. This is not for me. It seems pretty inclusive, but I'm not so sure that they mean me too. And I think it's also very heavily gendered, specifically with sexual orientation. So someone else might look at that and think, now Coca-Cola is endorsing whatever, sexual orientation and people being who they are. Even though I don't see that as a negative thing, but there could be someone who says, now they're just doing this just to sell Coca-Cola. So content and messages, media have embedded values and points of view. What lifestyles, values, and points of view are represented in or omitted from this message? Any point of view or value you notice? Other than just drinking Coca-Cola.
I mean, the message that I got from the video was like, enjoy your life, spend time with your family, your friends, the people you love.
Good. Enjoy your life and spend time with the people you love. Anyone else have another one?
Everybody is different. We are in the same world.
I couldn't hear the part. Can someone repeat for me?
That we are different and live in the same world.
Okay, so we're different. And anybody else have another one?
Maybe that it's important to spend time in sport, exercise, hobbies.
I didn't hear the last one.
Yeah, that we should spend time doing sports and exercise.
Good. Okay. Which actually is a little the opposite of drinking a Coke, but so you have to be careful about those messages too. So a lot of times they are counterintuitive. Motivation, finally, media are organized to gain profit and or power. And so the question is, why is this message being sent? Which I think we answered earlier, because Coca-Cola wants world domination, which I think they basically have. But ultimately, no matter what, no matter how fun-loving and wonderful something seems, the ultimate message is that media are organized to gain profit and or power. And I think that is it. So we're not gonna do this, I don't think. Am I out of time, Raul, or no?
Yeah, we're almost running out of time.
Okay, so I'll just leave that one. Raul has it in case you guys want to test your critical media literacy with this commercial. And I think that's it. So any questions?
Yes.
I have a question. And previously you showed like a video from Vice, and we would like you to ask you what is the perception in the States regarding to Vice, because here in Latin America and I think in Spain there are like different opinions and perspectives from Vice from that video. So I would like to know how Vice works in the States, or what's your perception about Vice.
And so all I heard, and I think it's because it's like a lot going on. Ro, can you repeat the question for me? Or
he's coming closer to the microphone.
Okay, cool.
Can you hear me now?
I can.
Closer to the microphone. Right here.
No. So my question is that previously you showed a video from Vice, and I would like to know what is the perspective in the States regarding to Vice, because I have read and I have heard a lot of different opinions about the website and the video. So I would like to know.
So what's my opinion about bias?
Vice.
Vice. Yeah.
Vice. Oh, my opinion about the Vice video?
And
just
about the channel in general.
Yeah.
Oh, okay. And so I personally like Vice because I think it shows a more balanced view, even though everything is going to, of course, be biased. I think they're pretty liberal. I just think that that's the case. But I think the way that they report the news is a little less biased and a little bit more well-rounded, because they, like I showed you, they give you the actual people involved's perspective, which I think is different than, for example, those news articles that we looked at, or opinion articles, which just gives that person's opinion about it. I hope does that answer your question?
Any last questions? Any final thoughts? Alejandro?
Okay, I can relate. Yes, I can relate critical medium literacy to understanding fake news. But how can I teach? Sure. Let me think a little bit more.
That's okay.
In the building of a critical media literacy view, in the building of that criticism of that critical view, what other things more than fake news we have to put our attention in?
So I think everything. So what your question is, you can see how it relates to fake news, but what other things should you use critical media literacy with? Yeah, and my answer is everything, which is why I tried to show the film thing. So what I want to do, say again, more disclosure, I usually talk about these two things separately, not together. I usually do the fake news one as one thing, and then the media, the popular culture one as separate, so you can get like a better view. But that's why I showed that those last few things, is because I think you can use critical media literacy to analyze any media whatsoever. So even if it is a film like that Percy Jackson film, you said that you watched it, something like that. The book actually has I forgot her name, but there's a main character in there aside from Percy, and it's a little girl. She's, I think, like Athena's daughter or something like that. She actually saves Percy throughout the novel. But when we get to the actual film, Percy is the main hero. In fact, there's a scene where he saves her from something, I think from Medusa or something like that. So something like that would be useful for students to see and use critical media literacy with. And you can ask them, why would they change from having a female heroine, to having just only Percy be the person? Do you see what I mean? So you can use it with anything, and you can use it with commercials like I just showed. I think anything deserves critical media literacy, anything that you look at. That's a good question.
All right, so here's where I come back.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much, Kathy. I think this session was enlightening. I think you guys have some good ideas of what critical media literacy is and what it means to kind of counter the culture of fake news, the culture
right.
of that seems to plague us all over the place. And I think we have a responsibility in classrooms to really provide alternative views against fake news, so our teachers can learn how to help their students tell fact from fake.
Right.
So in that sense, I appreciate your presence. I appreciate your words. I appreciate sharing these kids. Let's give Dr. Garland a round of applause.
Thank you.
So thank you so much. This was a very, very good session. I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate being here. I had fun. I hope you guys have fun too, and and learned a lot. So
right.
I appreciate it.
Thank you, and have a good one, Kathy.
You too. Have a great day.